Hi! In today's video, we'll explore dependency injection in SwiftUI. We'll compare three different approaches, looking at three common problems to solve. We'll go through the pros and cons of each approach, and by the end of the video, you'll have a solid foundation for managing dependencies in SwiftUI in apps of different sizes. If you're new here, my name is Felipe, and I am an iOS and macOS developer based in Norway. Why dependency injection? The first question is, what is dependency injection and why do we need it? Let's look at this simple view model. It renders a list of articles. When load data is called, it fetches posts from the backend and it updates the state. Now imagine we want to test this view model. The test might look like this. It seems simple, but there is a big problem. The test depends on the backend response. First, tests shouldn't hit the backend at all, but even if they did, the result depends on an uncontrollable external system, which makes the test unreliable. Dependency injection solves this by allowing us to control dependencies and clearly define boundaries between objects. Initializer Approach. One solution is to modify a post list view model. Instead of using the network client directly, we inject the dependency through the initializer. In this case, we pass a fetchPost function that is async and can throw. Notice that the view model depends only on the function that actually needs, not on the entire HTTP client. This keeps the boundaries clear between objects. You might also notice that the parameter has a default value, HTTP client.fetchPosts. This means the API of PostList view model stays the same, while still allowing us to override the dependency when needed. That gives us the best of both worlds. Now we can fix our test by injecting a custom fetchPost implementation that returns mock data. The test is now deterministic and fully controlled. Let's evolve the view model slightly. Here is our current implementation. Now we are tracking so we can record whether loading posts succeeded or failed. Since this introduces another dependency, the analytics provider, we add it as another initializer parameter. By default, we use .share, which is a singleton. This is a common pattern for SwiftUI apps, especially global services like analytics. Now, let's look at the limitation of initializer-based dependency injection. Consider a simple post item view that displays a post title and the number of likes. We want to make this configurable so that view can optionally show the likes count. For that, we add a show likes count parameter. But now, a problem appears. Post item view is used inside post list view. If you want to control that configuration from above, post list view must also expose that parameter. And this keeps bubbling up the hierarchy. That's the downside of dependency injection with initializers. New requirements tend to propagate up the hierarchy. Then parent containers end up with parameters that are only needed for deeply nested child views and multiple of them, which is far from ideal. The environment approach. SwiftUI provides another tool for dependency injection, the environment. We can define a new environment value using the addEntry macro and provide the default HTTP client implementation with the live function. Because the view model in this example was simple, the view can directly access the client from the environment and perform the request when it appears. Let's take a closer look. Since HTTP client is a struct, the environment entry can define a default value. The client itself contains a fetchPost closure. And here's the interesting part. By defining the closure in the initializer, you can create a builder-style factory functions. For example, live performs a real network request. Test returns mock data. This pattern of using structs and closures instead of protocols allows multiple implementations through the same API using a single type, and it's a useful trick to know about. Another powerful feature of the environment is that values can be overridden. For example, in a preview, we can override the HTTP client with a version that waits 2 seconds and returns mock data. The preview behaves as if it made an equal request without actually hitting the backend. And we achieve that without modifying the view itself or its behaviors. Now back to our previous problem, the view configuration. With environment, the solution becomes simple. We define an environment entry for the show likes count, and post item view reads it from the environment. The environment also supports hierarchical overrides. Imagine 2 tabs with separate view hierarchies that both use the post item view. If we override the show likes count in the subtree of one tab, only that branch will see the change. The other tab remains unaffected. This makes the environment extremely powerful for branch-specific configuration. However, the environment also has limitations. If we inject types like addObservable objects through the environment, we cannot provide the full values. If we forget to set them, the app will crash. Another limitation appears when using view models. View models cannot read the environment directly, so dependencies must still be passed through initializers. But environment values are not available during view initialization, only when the body is evaluated. That means that the view model often needs to be optional and initialized later using a task. Apple refers to this pattern as hydration and recommends it for certain expensive observable initializations. Finally, the environment doesn't help much with global app services. These services must exist outside SwiftUI, since SwiftUI represents only the view layer, not the entire application. Common examples include analytics, logging, networking, and feature flags. FactoryKit. At this point, we have seen two approaches. But at my day job, working on a large codebase, we wanted something with more structure. After some research, we started experimenting with FactoryKit. FactoryKit focuses specifically on dependency injection for Swift and SwiftUI. It breaks the problem into two parts. 1. Register factories. Factories are functions that know how to create a dependency. They are registered in a container that can be accessed from anywhere. 2. Resolve factories. Resolving means retrieving the factory and executing it to produce a dependency when needed. For example, we register a factory that creates our HTTP client. Then in the view model, we use the addInjected property wrapper. When the view model initializes, FactoryKit looks up the factory in the container and calls the resolve method to obtain the dependency. Injected properties are resolved during initialization. In many ways, this feels similar to add environment, but it works outside the view layer, including view models. Testing also becomes straightforward. In a test, we simply register different implementations of the factory. As long as this registration happens before the view model initializes, the view model will resolve with the mock dependency. FactoryKit also works inside views. For example, we can register a factory for show likes count and inject it directly in the view using addInjected. It behaves very similarly to the environment. For a second, I want to go back to the previous version of the PostList view model, where the dependencies were being passed to the initializer, the fetchPost function, and the analytics client. When it comes to the analytics provider, the implementation looks something like this. On its initialization, it sets up a third-party service, like Firebase, and sends events to it in the track function. Then, the test for that view model looks like this, which is quite a standard test for the view model. But the test has a problem, not noticeable at a glance. The view model uses the analytics provider.share as the default value in its initializer. That means the shared instance is using the test. Each time we run the test, we are initializing the Firebase service and sending tracking events to it, which is definitely not something we want to do in our tests. To solve this, let's look back at the analytics provider. I would rename this type to Live Analytics Provider and make Analytics Provider a protocol instead, which the live version will conform to. Then we can create something like a Log Analytics Provider that conforms to the protocol and accumulates tracked events into an internal array and prints them to the console. And also a Print Analytics Provider that only prints to the console. FactoryKit provides a feature called Scopes, where we can define custom implementations of the factory for certain scenarios, like on test and on preview. Here, we build a log analytics provider on the test and a print one for the previews. For this type, I opted the protocol approach to define variants of the same dependency. A detail though, since factories are functions that know how to create a dependency, that doesn't mean that they share state. For all our analytics cases, we want either to initialize the Firebase once or keep the state of the stored events in the log analytics provider. Then we can use the cache method on the factory, where the value will be created the first time the factory is accessed, but later calls will get the cache value instead. Comparison. Now we can compare our three approaches using the problems we discussed: HTTP clients, view configuration, and global services. The Initializer approach works well for injecting dependencies into view models. However, it struggles with the view configuration because the parameters bubble up the hierarchy. For global services, it works, but it often results in many singletons. The environment approach works nicely for injecting values into views and configuring parts of the UI tree. However, it becomes awkward when used with view models, and it doesn't help much with global surfaces. Finally, FactoryKit handles all three cases quite well, but it comes with trade-offs. Both initializers and environment are built into SwiftUI and require no external dependencies. FactoryKit is a third-party library and is also an architectural dependency. Both adding and removing the dependency require a lot of changes across your whole codebase. It also introduces a new mental model for managing dependencies. Because of that, I would mainly recommend it for medium to large projects. What I personally like the most about FactoryKit is that it makes dependency management very explicit. It forces you to think carefully about how dependencies are created, structured, and configured for test and preuse. In practice, this often leads to a more robust system. I hope this gave you a good overview of the different ways to implement dependency injection in SwiftUI. We have been using FactoryKit in production at my day job, which is where much of my experience with it comes from. There is one important question I haven't answered yet. How do you adopt FactoryKit in an existing large project? FactoryKit has a very extensive documentation, but I will personally answer that question in our next video, which will be linked here when it's out, based on my experience at work. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until the next one.